Well, welcome back to the Sports on the Bay podcast, where we highlight the people, programs, and professionals helping young athletes thrive both on and off the field. Today, we're diving into a topic that every sport parent will face at some point: injuries, recovery, performance, and keeping young athletes healthy for the long haul. Joining me today is Dr. Branden Cohen, founder of Proformance Sports Rehab and Nutrition. Branden is a physical therapist by trade and a movement enthusiast by nature. Over the past decade, he has dedicated his career to helping athletes move better, recover smarter, and perform at their highest level. Through thorough evaluations and individualized treatment plans, Branden focuses not just on reducing pain, but identifying and addressing the root cause of the problem. Proformance works with athletes on injury rehabilitation, return to play planning, performance training, and nutrition. They've also partnered with BCA Elite to support athlete development both on and off the field. Branden, thank you so much for joining us today.
Quite an introduction, Hope. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate this and giving you my time.
Before we jump in to injuries and performance, I think I'd love for listeners to get to know you a little bit better, learn more about the journey that led you to where you are today. So can you just tell us a little bit about your background and what led you into sports rehab and physical therapy?
Of course. I did my undergrad down at UMBC and majored in psychology, which brought me to Maryland. Left and went down to the University of St. Augustine in Florida for my physical therapy school. Stuck it out for 3 years on the beach. It was a tough environment, but it actually ended up being perfect for me because I didn't know anyone down there. So I focused mainly on studies and getting in the beach and the ocean and stuff. So it was really good. The other thing my school did was it gave me a ton of outpatient orthopedic skill. So it came out with a good handle on doing that. Uh, my first job was in Baltimore. I was at a clinic actually that was pretty heavy in the geriatric population, a lot of total knee replacements, a lot of lower back pain for the elderly. And it wasn't
Mhm.
the population that I see myself in now, but it got me a lot of experience and I learned a lot about where I should be with time management and the business side of the profession itself.
What inspired you to start the performance clinic?
Yeah, so at that job, like I said, I was treating a pretty older population, and then fell into working with the sports medicine group back at UMBC, and got to work with one of the athletes in particular there, and her and I kind of clicked on the rehab side, and then I was like, hey, after we're done kind of fixing your problem, why don't we work a little bit on your performance and see what we can do for when you go back to the track season. And she ended up crushing it. She still holds some records at the school, and that was, I think, back in 2015. So I'm
Mhm.
pretty proud of that. And then that kind of let me know that if we take the time and the energy and I have the opportunity to work with somebody one on one, we can make a substantial difference. And that was kind of my inspiration. It was my calling to say maybe the way I'm doing it right now isn't the best for treatment. It might be good for business, but the patient's not getting the best of me, and so that kind of drove me to saying, let me do what I think is right and what I think could be best serve the population, and that was pretty much my inspiration for starting Proformance Sports Rehab, and I've just I couldn't be happier with how we have the opportunity to work with people now one on one and just giving them our expertise on a daily basis.
So, since starting the clinic, do you find yourself working with a certain type of athlete, maybe one that you work with more often than others? And I think also if you can just share some of the misconceptions you probably learned now that you're in a different physical therapy space, working with athletes more. I'm sure you've come across plenty of parents, plenty of athletes who didn't even understand all that was available within the physical therapy world. So maybe if you can just kind of touch on the type of athlete and then some of those misconceptions.
Yeah, I mean, being in Annapolis, in the heart of a lacrosse, we see a lot of lacrosse athletes, um, men and women alike, pretty even. And then personally, I've kind of developed a niche in the triathlete population. So I got hooked up with a coach who no longer lives in the area, but at the time when he was here, would send me all of his athletes for evaluations prior to starting the season. So then when they get on
Hmm.
the bike, get out running or swimming or something, we kind of knew what their weaknesses may be in that sense. But yeah, those are probably the biggest two groups that we see. Um, and the biggest misconceptions I say is number one is what is the purpose of physical therapy? And by definition, our scope of work is to improve movement. It's not to treat pain, it's to improve movement impairment. So things that are wrong may cause pain, but our goal is to find out what is this root cause. And I think a lot of people have fallen into I roll into PT, I get the heat pack, I'm sitting with 30, 40 other people. My therapist is running all over the place and that needs to be the old way. And the new standard needs to be one-on-one. It needs to be with a therapist. The therapist is the expert. They need to be running them through the exercises because they know how to cue, they know what they're looking for. Um, and that's those are the two big misconceptions I would see is what is the correct standard and what is the purpose of physical therapy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great place to start. I think so many parents are trying to figure out when something is simply just normal soreness. I know just even talking to my 9-year-old, sometimes I'm like, does that really hurt or is it just top of mind for you right now? And then when does something really need a closer look? And one thing I hear all the time is, how do I know this is serious or is it just part of sports? And so maybe you can talk a little bit about what injuries are you seeing most often in youth athletes right now, and are there certain sports leading to more injuries, or maybe it's just lifestyle choice? But we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I try to tell parents and alike that use your physical therapist as much like a dentist. So come see us, understand what could go wrong before it goes wrong. Let us find some
Hmm.
impairments. Let us make sure things are moving okay. And if they're not, hey, here's 3 or 4 exercises to work on so that we don't get to injury. So making prevention the key is a big goal for I know our company and I'm sure for every athlete out there. And it's just like going to the dentist. You go, you get your routine cleaning, you get all the look through, the X-rays, this, that, and the other thing to make sure that there isn't something brewing or underlying that could cause a bigger problem down the road. Um, the common injuries, unfortunately, right now are overuse. There's just whether it be a tendonitis, an osis, something like that, anything that ends in itis, I think we've talked about is
Hmm.
pain. And so no matter where it's coming from, the burst of the tendon, it just means something's being used more than it needs to. And it's creating some form of breakdown and that tissue is just priming itself to fail. And that is not where you want to be. And what that means is either one, the volume is too high, or the movement patterns are wrong and they're causing something to happen in that nature. And certain
Oh,
sports, sorry to cut you off, but
oh
I
no, go
wouldn't
ahead.
say there's one sport in particular. Obviously, with a contact sport, you roll in things, concussions and head injuries of that sense, which you don't normally see in a non-contact sport like a track and field, so to say. But the injury rate is very similar when you pull those out. Just because you're only running, if your running volume is higher than what your tissue capacity is, then it's going to fail, much like it will on a field or anywhere else. So I wouldn't say the cross country athlete is any safer than the lacrosse athlete in the world of
Yeah,
avoiding injury.
absolutely. At what point do you feel parents, and I think I even struggle with this as a parent, is like, when do I seek evaluation? Or is it okay if you're just unsure and you just want a physical therapist to take a look at some of what, maybe if they have an ailment that's been going on or lingering for a while? And I always never know, do I go orthopedics right away or do I go to PT, or is there a chain of command when there is an injury?
Yeah, I mean, so the good news in the state of Maryland, you have that ability to decide, do I need to see an MD or do I need to see a P or can I see a PT? And in our state, we have something
Okay.
called direct access, so it allows you to come off the street essentially and see a physical therapist, and that works for most insurance companies in the state. Um, what to look for? Obviously, the number one thing is having a relationship where you can communicate with your child. if the communication's good and you know what your child's norm is and they can be honest with you about, hey, I don't feel good today and something's not right, then that's a great place to start and say, hey, maybe we should get this checked out. Some kids have a fear of going to the doctor to begin with, so they might stop themselves from limping or something. But limping is obviously something you don't want your child to be doing. I mean, for bigger things, blood, I mean, some of the more common sense things, but look at those movement patterns. If they're moving improperly, I usually say give it at least something 48 hours. If they had an activity on Tuesday and they're not moving well on Wednesday and they're kind of sore, but Thursday maybe they're moving a lot better, then maybe, yeah, it's just sore.
Hmm.
Maybe they just had a 3-game tournament on Saturday and then 2 more on Sunday, something like that. And then Monday they're like, my legs are killing me. And you're like, well, that makes sense. You just played for 7 hours straight and
Hmm.
we need to take a break. But if those symptoms persist for over a week, a phone call is definitely warranted. So movement patterns, 48, continued symptoms of some rate, you're looking at 7 to 10 days, I think is a good timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. Parents often worry about missing games or falling behind. I know you guys focus a lot on the bigger picture, making sure those athletes are healthy, not just next week, but years from now. Let's talk a little bit about return to play. What does a proper return to play process actually look like? And what mistakes do athletes and parents make when coming back from injury?
Yeah, I mean, you're always gonna miss whether you miss a game or 2, you're gonna miss a lot more if you get hurt, right? So, avoiding that injury is huge. Keeping that overuse down is important. Our return to play process is an in-depth process at Proformance. We obviously spend some time with your athlete prior to getting to the testing phase, so we have a kind of our own baseline of where are they, what are they doing? And then it's a look at symmetry. What's the affected side look like as compared to the unaffected side? Because if it's too big of a difference, it's going to cause a compensatory pattern. The rate of injury goes through the roof. The biggest precursor to an injury is the history of an injury. So you have to worry about not only the physical side of is there symmetry or not, and then you have the mental aspects of is this athlete ready to be back on the field mentally? And there's some testing and questioning and conversation that the therapist and the athlete sometimes can have, um, and that kind of gets them in there. The other piece of this puzzle is limiting the volume in that return. So going back to practice in stages, like, hey, we're going to do offensive drills, we're going to do non-contact drills, we're going to do 10 minutes of defense today, but no offense today. And managing that
Mhm.
volume to get them back to 100% to where the athlete feels comfortable physically and mentally to be back on the field and their risk of injury has reduced as much as possible. Again, it comes back to communication. Is the PT communicating with the coach? Is the PT communicating with the parents? And we try to develop that relationship. We have a good relationship with a few athletic trainers in the area that it just becomes
Mhm.
a trusting like, hey, is Mary or Joe Smith, are they ready to go back? And it's like, yeah, they are, but they need some coaching. They need some more work on that field play before they will be not just physically but sport ready to get back on there. It's just got to be graded. You have to, yeah, it has to be a trusted process. You can't just rely on is the tissue ready or is the tissue not ready? Because a bone heals, but is the athlete healed here, and are they
Mhm.
ready to go back to that sport?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you actually, this wasn't part of our original framework, but I actually have a question about this with return to play. A lot of it is mental for the kids. How do you support them from a mental health perspective? I'm sure, I mean, I have a nephew who he's a baseball player, just had elbow surgery, and um, it really messed with his psyche for a while. And so it was just, how do you help them? How are you supplementing the other side of it? Like, do you offer those resources as well?
So I've always wanted to have someone in-house. We outsource it to some of the local psychologists in the area who kind of
Hmm.
specialize in it. I think that mental aspect, like you were saying, is just as important as the physical aspect. I could have someone as strong as an ox, but if they are too scared to step off the box and land on that leg that they just had an operation on. We have a whole host of other things going on that need to be taken
Mhm.
care of, or else maybe they're gonna go down that road of re-injury, re-injury, re-injury because there's just no confidence in there. So I I promote it tremendously, and I'd love
Mhm.
for it to be another pillar of my company at some point down
Yeah.
in time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts for families. Kids are competitors. They want to get back out there. Parents definitely don't want them missing opportunities, but rushing the process can sometimes create a much longer road back. Of course, the best injury is the one that never happens. So let's talk about what families can be doing proactively before injuries occur. What can young athletes do year round to reduce injury risk? And I think it would be helpful to also just throw in age around that, because there's obviously a subset of kids who are getting more competitive, but there's only so much they can be doing from a strength training perspective. So if you could just kind of decipher between the two, that would be helpful.
Yeah, of course. I mean, these are great questions that are asked very often. What can we do to reduce injury risk? And that's our bread and butter, right? So paying attention to your body is the gold standard, right? If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, and it needs to be attended to. Um, that's a huge piece of the puzzle. Like I said, getting that evaluation, let us look to make sure how you've developed from that baby up into this athlete. Like what things did maybe you rush or miss that you need to work on a little bit more now to get stable so you don't have that injury going forward. Um,
Hmm.
we push like changing what you do, making sure you're doing different stuff throughout the year. If you keep doing the same thing, if I tell you to keep pushing this red button for 3 years, and then I'm like, all right, we're gonna push green today, and you're like, whoa, man, green's all the way up here. I'm built to do this. So changing what you do can make you a little bit more versatile and reduce that injury risk again. Um, we push a lot on working on mobility, understanding your body, being connected with the ground, doing some of these quote unquote boring things that may not be as savvy or as Instagram friendly, but if you do these things and do them well, you're going to be playing longer, faster, and
Hmm.
better in the long run. 15 minutes of doing these basic things and getting out there and getting on the grass and doing stuff could set you up for some longer term success. Um, the big thing with age range that we look at is your body has to be ready to accept this heavier load if you're going to start lifting weights. And we generally think like around that 10, 11 year range, you can start to move against some resistance. I'm not saying get under a barbell and you put 225 on that thing and lifting, but maybe start
Hmm.
moving against some resistance and having a coach there and someone there to be like, hey, your mechanics are good or your mechanics are poor, and this is how we need to work on it. And we're going to use our 15 minutes to reduce your deficits. So then when we start to load your body, it's prepared for it. And you can build that central stability. So then your rest of your body knows how to move and is free and has a ton of degrees of freedom and the ability to do it. So before that age, working on mechanics, crawling, rolling, some of the basic things you do as a baby that we spend our life kind of reducing by sitting in a chair, sitting at a desk at school for
Hmm.
8 hours a day, doing all these things to kind of reverse the positiveness of what the human body was meant to do. So using those younger years to learn how to use and move your body and create the power that you want. So then when you start to lift, that lifting just complements you and makes you faster, makes you stronger, makes you jump higher.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be a case study because my son saw someone at your clinic and it was a great experience. He just had a bone bruise, obviously nothing like overly serious, but I think the biggest takeaway that I took from that is he's a really fast kid, but he's really small, especially for his age. And the physical therapist we worked with really stressed the importance of just like building a strong core for him, because it's just going to help him that much more on the soccer field from taking hits, whatever that looks like, and being able to kind of have more stability. And that's a very simple thing that we can just incorporate as parents, help him build that on his own. It doesn't have to be, we don't need to be doing it 5 days a week, but he can be doing some things that it's a small thing that I think could make a big difference as he's aging and getting more competitive in the sport. So that's a good case study that came out of coming to see you guys. So thank you for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, central stability will always breed distal mobility. If the center isn't stable, the rest of the body is going to have to compensate for it. So learning how to move and use our spine, like I said, it's all the boring stuff that doesn't make the highlight reel. But I mean, if you
Hmm.
watch an NBA game now before game, these guys are moving with bands. They're doing these much different things versus just running the old layup lines and shooting from the elbow and stuff of that nature. So there's a very different, very big culture shift happening in like what preparation truly looks like and how we should view the athlete and are they ready to play? Are they not ready to play? And it's good to see. And you can bring some of these pieces down from that professional level. There, you don't have to be getting paid $34 million a year to receive top-notch
Hmm.
service that can get you to another level. Yeah, not everyone's gonna be 6'6", 225, right? So learning
Hmm.
how to use your body and move and do things and understand it can give you that edge that you need if you don't have the size.
Yeah. I So the other aspect to injury prevention, and I did an interview with the Gaberas, Tyler and Talia, brother and sister. They played professional soccer, and I think one thing that they mentioned was you see on social media all the time, you gotta do it every day, or you're not going to succeed, and just like the importance of rest for young athletes. And this obviously goes back to the overuse and spending way too much time doing the same thing over and over. But talk to me a little bit about rest and how much makes sense, and what should athletes be considering in their scheduling. I mean, granted, in season might look a little different than off season, but just kind of touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of big points in there, right? So what is rest? What is your definition of rest? And rest isn't just sit on your couch and melt and grab some Lay's potato chips and just go down. Rest is doing something to your body to allow it to recover appropriately so it's
Mhm.
prepared for performance the next day or whenever that day may come. Um it all depends on, right, it's very seasonality. Your off season should be preparation for your season. You should be working very hard in your off season, and I stress that we are talking off season, which means you are off season from your sport. We're not
Mhm.
playing our sport in the season, we are working in the off season. So our volume is going to be very high in the strength, conditioning, and the work. So when the season comes, your body is more prepared for the time you won't have to do the strength and conditioning. So there will be some degradation in muscle. There will be some weakness. There will be some, like, you see guys in sports at the end of the season in the playoffs in the championship, they're tired sometimes, but the guys who are prepared, the shot quality's still there. Their speed's still there. Everything's still there because they prepared themselves in that off season. We generally say if you're practicing 4 or 5 times a week in season, you need at least 1 day of rest. You need 1 day of true rest. Walk, recover. I think we're going to get into some nutrition stuff. That's a huge piece about your
Mhm.
off day, and doing those things, like I said, to get your body prepared for that performance again. In the off season, your rest may look different, right? So you may have a program split between your week for work, so where you're working one part of your body, but the other part of your body isn't working as much, so it's at rest, and then you go back into a different kind of day. So you can do a little bit more in your off season because you're resting in a different manner. So maybe you have one less day of rest, but there always has to be a day. You need a day
Mhm.
at minimum to where your body has the ability to just shut off mentally, shut off physically, and recover. Because just like your body, your
Yeah.
brain your brain needs to rest too. It needs time.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you just touched on it, the nutrition piece. I think that's one thing that often gets overlooked until there's a problem. And let's talk a little bit about fueling young athletes. What are the biggest nutrition mistakes you see? And um, you can touch a little bit about some of the eating habits they should have before practices and games, and recovery. That I'm sure there's a whole layer to that when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, how many more hours do we have right now to go over that? That's uh, where do I begin? Just like the standard of healthcare, unfortunately, what I'm seeing, you go to an office, you wait 2 hours to see a doctor for 10 minutes, or you come to PT and you see your PT with 6 or 7 other patients, and the standard is just gone down, and the standard of
Hmm.
food is just so low at this time, and you see all these things online and in the news about how food's being treated. So thinking about that in a fueling sense and a nutrition sense, right? If you put low quality sup food into a system, you're going to get a low quality output. If you put regular fuel into an F1 race car, it's not going to be able to power itself on that in that end. So the higher quality stuff you put into the system, the better output you're going to get. So fuel is very important. The types of foods, like your body. I think a lot of these things are people hear, well, what's good, what's bad? The low ingredient list. How many ingredients are in your product, or is it just this is an apple? There's one ingredient and it's apple. And my body
Hmm.
understands how to take that, maximize as much as it can, and use that. Um, and then, like you said, with hydrate, that's a part of the food. With hydration, drink as much as you can.
Hmm.
There's these kids are running for hours. It's 85, 90 degrees outside. They can't drink enough water.
Hmm.
There's never enough. 8 glasses, they say, what is it? 8 glasses a day is normal intake, and that's for someone who's not active.
Hmm.
I believe the new standard is like 1 ounce per pound of body weight, and then that's again for not active. Then you have to add in X amount for every hour of practice you play, intensity, indoor versus outdoor. Just keep drinking water. Keep drinking as much as you
Hmm.
can and fuel your body. There's no reason for there to be anyone having a fueling issue with water. So it's abundant in this country, and we should have
Hmm.
plenty to go around. Um, and I could touch on the food some more. The big things that I hear, unfortunately, now is some of these athletes come into our clinic at 10, 11 o'clock in the afternoon, haven't eaten anything, coming in to work out, coming in to exercise or do their rehab, or they've had a bar or something that's just that's processed and made, and your body just doesn't understand how to use all that. That bar may say
Hmm.
15 grams of protein, and maybe your body's going to process 8 of it, and the rest is just kind of junk. So getting in good food is very important, and the more natural, the less ingredient it is, the more your body's gonna understand how to use it as fuel. Those nutrition facts are ideal for what it could be. If there's no nutrition fact on your food, it's because it is the most nutritious thing you could probably have.
Yeah.
Fruits, vegetables, hammer 'em.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is also so much information online today, so many products being marketed at you, especially now towards young athletes. It's actually pretty incredible what's out there, but I mean, it is hard to know what's actually beneficial, what's just noise. If I was a athlete coming to you, are you and they were interested in supplements, are you guys kind of help guiding them with what might be the best? Yes, there's the nutrition piece, but the supplements is a big piece today, more so than I was when I was an athlete. And are you able to kind of guide them through that process as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you gotta think again, like we talked about the definition of rest. Definition of supplement is to supplement your diet. So what are you not getting in your diet that we can supplement with something else? Because maybe you're doing so much that you need something quick, you need something else.
Hmm.
And so the number one thing is let's look at what you eat during a week. Let's look at how much intake you're getting. How much protein are you getting? Your carbs, your fats. How much are you getting of these main groups? How much rest are you getting in a week? Let's check these basic boxes of sleep, stress, diet, and if you can check those boxes, let's talk about supplementing. I think with the amount of exercise kids are doing now, when you get into those higher teenage years, supplementing some protein shakes after workout, that's good stuff. And if you have like intolerances to dairy and stuff. There's a lot of different options for you as well. So I think there's some good sense in that. There are good and bad companies. You see 20,000 different brands. Only a few of these brands get tested by a third party. And those are the big
Hmm.
things to look for. Is this tested by a third party? One of the big markers I look for is it sports certified. So is this thing tested to where an athlete can take it? And if they get drug tested before their game, they'll pass because this is a legal piece. And if it gets that
Hmm.
testing, that means it has to go through another level of testing. And so there are a few brands out there that are going out of their way to make sure their product is what it says it is and giving
Hmm.
something safe. The reason that things are there's such a like if you take a vitamin D supplement, let's say, there's a reason one of them costs $5 and one maybe costs 35 because there's no real regulation behind it, unfortunately. And
Hmm.
what's in that pill may like, is it 5,000 IUs or is it five? And
Right.
the more trusted that brand can be, the better it is. And so we push a few brands in our office, like we talked about with hydration again. I think electrolytes in themselves are those are basic things. Gatorade's been doing it for years. Unfortunately, they've kind of stuck to their original recipe. They're trying some low sugar options and stuff in that nature, which is good. But there are some zero sugar and more natural options for you in the world of electrolytes. Just being able to keep the fuel rolling in your body and making it as normal as possible is ideal.
Yeah. That's great. Well, let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the bigger picture of youth sports and where things are headed. Maybe you can just kind of give us your thoughts on the landscape. You can even touch here in the county a little bit. Obviously, it's a pretty saturated area. You obviously are in the lacrosse world a little bit more, or you see a lot of lacrosse athletes. Kind of what are your concerns? What gives you hope? And are there things that parents could be doing to kind of help support a healthier athletic environment?
Yeah. My biggest concern is always long-term health, right? You you have this very high injury rate, and we can help reduce a lot of the overuse stuff. We can't prevent trauma, but we can help a lot of the overuse stuff. And setting up an athlete for a bad orthopedic future, maybe more than just like, oh, they have a bum, oh, I got a bum knee. Maybe it becomes a deterrent to them wanting to exercise. And then if you're
Hmm.
not exercising, you can just the ramifications of that for your long-term health, the amount of other diagnoses and endless it goes through the roof when you're not exercising regularly. You want to create these habits with not just exercise, but fueling and create this positive relationship between your child and these things. So as they age, they're like, hey, I maybe I'm not playing 5, 6 days a week, but I still enjoy getting sweaty. I still enjoy moving and exercising and feeling good in my body and doing these kinds of things and
Hmm.
creating those habits are and then that relationship is extremely important in mine. That would be my biggest thing is worrying about not just your kid today and is he gonna get on the field, is he gonna get that scholarship, but thinking like, hey, in 20 years, is my kid still gonna be healthy and able to do the things he
Hmm.
enjoys, loves, or where are we gonna be? The more active people are, it's just it's gonna be better and it needs to be that and creating this longevity thing is another thing that we start to press on with once you get out of sport. Where are you gonna be? What's your outlook?
Yep. No, that's great. I mean, yeah, I think youth sports are really about helping kids develop good habits, right? Confidence, resilience, and just a life as a former athlete, like a lifelong love for movement so that when they have kids and like they can move with their kids and be doing great great things
Yeah.
too and showing them the right way to be growing up in sports. And I think that's really important. We finish every podcast the same way. What is one thing from either your own sports experience or maybe it's just from working with athletes that really resonates with you today?
I had written one thing to you, and I'm a huge Knicks fan, so I've been watching nonstop Jalen Brunson highlights. And he said the big thing he said was, don't be afraid to fail. It's okay. And if you
Hmm.
take failure and you learn from it, it's okay. Do hard things and fail at them and then learn from it and just keep educating yourself. and working hard, and success can be defined in a million different ways, and it doesn't always mean a $50 million contract. Maybe it means happiness and the ability to run with your grandkids and great grandkids, and
Mhm.
that's it. So take take that and run with it in any way you can, and don't be scared to fail. It can happen.
Mhm.
Every But you gotta learn from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and that Knicks game was such a good lesson for my 9-year-old son because when they came back, he has a tendency, like, I'm just gonna put him out there, someday he'll listen to this, but he has this tendency to get really down if they're down by 1 and there's 5 minutes left, and I was like, "This is the biggest testament of never give up."
Yeah.
Anything could literally happen, and it was a really cool experience watching him watch that because he was like, "Whoa, that's the wildest thing I've ever seen." So,
One of the best
it
days of
was
my life outside of having kids and getting married, hands down.
Yes, I like that, that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. For parents interested in learning more about performance sports rehab and nutrition, we will link all of their information in the show notes and on the Instagram page. As always, thank you for listening to Sports on the Bay. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with another sports parent, coach, or athlete, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Thank you very much, Hope. Appreciate the time.